Hello and welcome to Development Matters. On the program today,
the money being spent on the government schools are the same money being spent in PPP schools.
we debate the use of private-public partnerships to provide education in Liberian public schools.
Education is a public good that needs not to be commercialized.
Also on the program today, we look at why students at a school in Grand Bassa County are literally acing the national exams.
100 students took the exam and 100% pass.
But we begin with our debate on the use of private-public partnerships, or PPP, to provide education in Liberian public schools, as we now join our moderator on Let's Debate It.
Hello and welcome to Let's Debate It on Development Matters. I'm your moderator, Reverend Rita Townsend, Vice President for Institutional Advancement and Associate Professor at William V.S. Tubman University in East Harper, Maryland County. As you may know, there are private for-profit entities that have taken over and are running several elementary schools across the country which receive funding from the government. Is it good for our educational system? Or does it represent an unwise use of government resources that undermine the public school system? So to answer these questions today, we will debate the issue: public-private partnerships, the key to a reformed education sector. For the affirmative, we have with us Urias Brooks. He has worked in the areas of primary education and is currently the executive director of the Liberian Youth Network Lionet, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on children and youth development issues. For the negative, we have Anderson Miyame of the Coalition for Transparency and Accountability in Education. You may recognize it as COTE. Gentlemen, I want to say welcome. The debate has rules, very simple rules. Each side will have 3 minutes for their opening argument, followed by 2 minutes each for rebuttals. And then we wrap up with a minute of closing arguments. We have an audience in the studios today. We want to welcome our audience and say thanks for coming. Who is in favor of the motion? Public-private partnerships, the key to a reformed education system. Okay. And by a show of hands, who is against the motion? All right. 3 for the motion and 2 against. And after the debate, we will ask you to see whether you've been swayed one way or another. We now go to Urias Brooks for the affirmative. Let's debate it. Urias, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I do support public-private partnership for 3 principal reasons. The first reason is public-private partnership provides the much-needed paradigm shift in our education sector. What is the paradigm shift? Let's look at the current paradigm in our education sector. The Ministry of Education provides teaching within public schools. The same ministry provides monitoring and supervision of teachers within the schools. This is a conflict of interest. The ministry cannot evaluate itself, and it is not objective in the evaluation. The result shows that our students are failing. They are poor schools. So we need a paradigm shift in our education sector. And PPP provides that, where private entities will separate and independently run and manage public schools in Liberia. This will lead to the Ministry of Education monitoring and evaluating the performance in these schools. This will lead to transparency, accountability, and efficiency within our schools. All of these will lead to improved school management and academic performance within our school. The second reason I do support public-private partnership, it will secure funding from the private sector for our education system. The money and the budget being spent on our education sector is far below spending requirement by the Sustainable Development Goals. The third reason is the public-private partnership fosters community involvement. PP is known for its entrepreneur relying on community support through PTA structure that leads to enrollment, retention, and academic performance of our students. To wrap up, let me just conclude by saying that public-private partnership is the way forward. Looking at enrollment from the piloted project in public-private partnership school in Liberia, enrollment remains at 80% of our students, retention of teachers at 90%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Now let's hear from the negative as we join Mr. Anderson Miame.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Let me indicate here that I am not against just public-private partnership. What I oppose is for-profit injection in the education system. I'm opposed to PPP or for-profit PPP in the education sector for the following reasons. One, it commercializes education. Education is a public good that needs not to be commercialized. When we commercialize education, we sacrifice quality and students' welfare for profit. And what we have in the sector currently is that many of the providers, especially the international providers, are for-profit entities that have come to maximize profit at the expense of the education sector. Second, the model being used in the sector right now does not support transparency and accountability. We are informed that all of the providers were not recruited through transparent and competitive process. Besides that, PPP is turning public schools into corporate entities. PSL or the PPP providers are not giving leverage to independent investigators to access schools. Third, PPP is not sustainable. The current PPP is largely donor-driven. Donor funding, we have records to show that donor fundings dry up. And when that happens with this PPP, it is going to be detrimental to the sector in terms of transitioning to the old system. The fourth point is that there is lack of community engagement, stakeholders engagement in decision-making around the PPP. When the program was introduced, many stakeholders, including county education officers and parents, were not engaged during the process of introduction of this program. Because of the listed reasons, I am opposed to the current model of public-private partnership in education, whereby the government of Liberia is outsourcing its responsibility to provide education to Liberians to foreign and for-profit actors.
And thank you very much, Mr. Miame, for that spirited opposition to public-private partnerships. And now for rebuttals. We bring again for the affirmative, Mr. Urias Brooks, and remember, you have 2 minutes.
Let us look at the results. By-school performance, post-school attendance. I do support the idea of private partnership in terms of profit making. So long it is producing the quality education in the classroom, that is perfect. Not all public-private partnership providers are for profit making. The money being spent on the government schools are the same money being spent in PPP schools. And the money spent in PPP schools are being accounted for through the Public Procurement Concession Commission. All of the providers went through the PPC bidding process. The records in PPP schools shows that the teachers are regularly attended. They have academic materials in terms of teaching aids. Students are provided textbooks to do homework from. So it is important that the public-private partnership be supported. In terms of sustainability, the community is working in alignment with the school, where the principal is empowered to lead to bring about the school culture, where the PTA can provide monitoring. They can also provide some agriculture tools for the feeding of students within those schools, as compared to the normal schools that you don't find these initiatives ongoing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks. And now let's join Mr. Miame for his rebuttal.
I differ with my colleague when he says that government does not have resources to fund education, because of which we should give our sovereignty to international actors. Most of the providers under this PPP program are international for-profit organizations. The Liberian institutions are just being used for cover-up. What becomes of the profits that these organizations make? Research have shown that one of the providers is spending up to $9 million or spend up to $9 million USD during the first year of the pilot. And of that amount, $5.5 million was used overseas. $9 million for just 1 year, when the entire Ministry of Education gets around $45 million annually to operate, to operate not just primary school, but even up to secondary school. So it is not sustainable. The other point is the government has a responsibility to provide quality education for everyone. What we've seen under the PPP is that it is not inclusive. Students are being denied access to the schools under the PPP program because of class cap. 55 students in each class compared to traditional schools that have up to 75 students. Some of the students denied access to the PPP schools ended up not going to school at all because nearby schools were either overcrowded or they could not accommodate them. We want a system that we can sustain. The PPP model under review is not sustainable, so it is not the best way. Let's ensure that we fund education. There are international requirements that we spend around 20% of our budget on education. We've not done that. The problem in the sector is not because we do not have accountability necessarily. The core problem is lack of funding. The Ministry of Education has complained about funding. DOs and structures we have at the local level do not have the required resources to operate. That is why we got problem in the sector, and the sector is being deemed as being messy. So to address it, we do not need PPP or profit-making entities to come and take over our schools. Liberians are managing schools and they are performing. Stella Marie Polytechnic is here. They are very good schools that are being run by Liberians. How are they managing those schools? We need resources to our public school system to operate, and we do not need a PPP, especially for profit entities that are going to make profit and take their profits abroad.
Well, Mr. Miami, I'd like to thank you for that spirited rebuttal. And now we'll take a couple of questions from the audience.
This question is for you, Mr. Brooks. The PPP, are they getting money from the government? If so, why are we giving them taxpayer money and for them to go and make profit?
Yes, these public providers are receiving money from government. Not all PPP providers are for profit. The argument is if the government intends to provide quality education, and if these private providers are providing these public schools the requisite education, there's no need to comment on money. Because the same money that the government will use on the normal schools are the same money the government is providing to the private providers. And the results are there. By school performance, our students are failing in the national exams. So do we want our school to continue failing?
Let's take our second question from the audience. Yes, you're recognized.
Mr. Miamia, I have a question for you. For 170 years now, we've tried the current school system, and it hasn't worked for us. Don't you think it's high time now that we move on to this PPP system that's going to benefit our country?
If the argument is that 170 years there's messiness in the sector, then let's outsource the entire Ministry of Education, because they control the system. So they've been presiding over the mess. So let's control central administration. Even our government, 170 years, our rules, our bad things are not changing. So let's outsource the management of our country to foreign actors, countries that have performed, so that they can come and improve system in the country. If the argument is that school management is poor because of which we want to bring in for-profit actors, let's outsource the entire ministry to foreign actors to take over, and even our government. So the problem in the sector is about funding. Once we can have funding, I'll tell you why. Under the PPP, one of the providers is spending 1,000 plus USD on each student. And what that means is in the traditional public school system, government spends around $50 on each student. What that means in essence is that for every one child that is being supported under one of the providers under the PSL program, that funding goes towards 20 students in the traditional school. They are non-comparable. So even if the PPP schools are performing or were to perform, it wouldn't be magic, because there's cross disparity in funding to PPP schools and what we have currently under the traditional system.
It was rambunctious response. And now for closing arguments. And we will begin with Mr. Brooks.
NADA statistics shows in Liberia that PSL providers met community engagement requirement. Also, in normal schools, you find out that 40% of the children are not attending classes regularly. 20% are not following academic lessons. Compared to the PSL schools, students are in class regularly, 80% of them. They are following the lesson by 90%. The teachers are teaching regularly, unlike in the normal schools that teachers are not coming to school regularly. Teachers in PSL school were placed on payroll adequately in the beginning of the school year, unlike normal schools that teachers still scramble to get on the payroll. PSL provides the way forward that the community can feel their own impact in terms of providing the hopes and aspirations of the Liberian children.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks. Now let's hear from the negative as we join Mr. Anderson Miame.
It is not true that students have been performing in all of the schools that have been run under the PPP program. In fact, I must indicate here that study has shown that all of the providers did not fully operate under the pilot. So for my colleague to say that students performed well under the PPP program or in the PSL school is not factual. Apart from that, like I indicated, support to the PSL school and what is being given to the current school system is grossly different in terms of funding. There's a gap. Apart from that, he indicated that the providers have been doing very well in terms of engagement with community. That's not true. The research showed that there is lack of community participation in processes leading to the PPP and even the workings of the providers. Privatizing and outsourcing public education for profit entities that will make profit and ship those profits abroad is not the way to go.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now let's see where the audience stands. By a show of hands, let's see who is for the affirmative. All right, thank you very much. Now let's see who is for the negative. When we began, we had 3 for the affirmative and 2 against. And now, due to this spirited, hot debate from our youthful leaders who are thinking for years, generations down the road in terms of our educational system. For the affirmative, in the end, we have 2. And for the negative, we have 3. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. Let's debate it on development matters. I have been your moderator, Reverend Rita Townsend. Thanks to our debaters, Urias Brooks and Anderson Miame. And thanks to our audience. And thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, everyone.
This is Development Matters. We'll be back in just a moment.
Corruption, it can be minimized, provided if the parents and the child don't compromise.
Corruption killing all, we not satisfied. Make my heart burn slow, whatever I testify.
Welcome back to Development Matters, as we now take a look at a school whose students are excelling in national exams.
There is something special happening at Kpanay Town Public School in Grand Bassa County. Enrollment is way up. Teachers are trained and motivated.
Let's go.
There is an active PTA and an engaged local community.
We parents will want to see this school to a full-fledged high school.
Students are literally acing national standardized exams.
Who can tell me the representative of Grand Bassa Buchanan District?
Gabriel Rena Smith.
Many reasons account for the school's success. But the person chiefly responsible for all of this is Theophilus Frankyu, principal of Kpanay Town Public School.
When I was senior 2011, I met one idiot student. I told my parents, I said, look, and I hear a low number of students. So I asked them, what can we do? Parents suggested that we should do house-to-house mapping, going from house to house, asking parents to send their children to school, because before then parents don't want to send their children to school. 2014-2015 school year, the students went up to almost 900.
But there was one problem. The school had no space to accommodate the increased number of students. To solve the problem, the principal again went to the PTA and the local community.
I asked the parent, what can we do? He said, look, the principal will stand by you. Whatever you want us to do, we'll do it. And they did a contribution. We started first honors. The children entered. 2015-2016, the number buzzed up. We saw 900 plus in the morning and 600 plus in the afternoon. So we said, no, we have to be another honors. We called PTA meeting, they were all decided, and we agreed based upon that we were able to be another honors, the second honors.
Now, the emphasis was on preparing and motivating teachers.
On the academic level, we found out that if you have infrastructure and you don't have the best of the knowledge or the brain, definitely it's nothing. So we start working on the children, working on the teachers, having workshop and telling them what to do, how to teach the children to be prepared.
The community also pitched in raising funds to supplement teachers' monthly salaries.
The government can do all, and we as a community should also help.
Their efforts paid off. The school's performance on standardized exams saw steady and remarkable improvement.
Because of our way of teaching the children, the first year we went 75% in West African examination result. Last year we went 100% pass. Students, 106 students took the exam and 100% pass. Today we are proud of students.
But there is still work to be done. The school now goes up only to 10th grade, and the plan is to take it up to the 12th grade, make it a full-fledged, fully equipped high school.
Our vision is to have an equipped sound lab, laboratory, equipped library, and also more qualified teachers.
This is Development Matters. We'll be back in just a moment. This is Development Matters. And now, for Historicana, we look at Rabas International Airport, an airport that for 75 years has been Liberia's indispensable link to the rest of the world.
Originally built with the assistance of the United States government in 1942, Rabas is steeped in history. It served as a crucial base of support for the Allies' effort in the North African theater during the Second World War. The photo of President Roosevelt and Edwin J. Barclay of Liberia at Rabas in a military jeep with President Barclay at the wheel shortly after the two men had launched at the airport is perhaps the most iconic photo of an American president and a Liberian president together. The airport, which for many years had the longest runway in Africa, came of age during the jet age. By the 1970s, Rabas was Pan Am's principal African hub. In fact, the airport was managed by Pan Am from the end of World War II to 1985. A non-stop Pan Am flight flew from New York's JFK to Rabas, from where it flew on to other African cities across the continent. In fact, Rabas was such an important Pan Am Africa hub that virtually every Pan Am passenger visiting Africa had to travel through Rabas. The same can be said of passengers on the many European airlines that made Rabas their point of destination. They included Swiss Aid, Scandinavian Airlines, KLM, British Caledonian, Sabrina, and of course UTA. All of them touched down at Rabos at least once a week. In 1976, the Concorde, on its maiden test flight through Africa, touched down at Rabos before flying onto South Africa. When the U.S. space program was looking for an emergency landing site for the space shuttle, guess where they chose? Of course, Rabos. Like with many things in Liberia, Rabos suffered during the country's 14-year civil war. Major airlines stopped coming to Liberia. But with a spanking new terminal under construction and brand new baggage handling equipment, Rabos may be ready for another 75 years of linking Liberia to the rest of the world.
This is Development Matters. And now we get a letter from the Diaspora.
Dear students of the University of Liberia and fellow Liberians, greetings from the Diaspora and greetings from the University of Liberia Alumni Chorus. My name is Rena Smith-Jarrett, President of the University of Liberia Alumni Chorus, a group that is comprised of professional men and women who sang together in the university chorus more than 20 years ago. In 2009, we organized ourselves particularly to continue the legacy of our late esteemed directress, Professor Agnes Nebo von Bomus, who to date was Liberia's first and only ethnomusicologist.
Von Bomus, while she was still alive, prompted Charles Russell, who became the association's first president, to bring the association together again to support the university.
Dear Charles, I would like to recapture all of my choral works which have been destroyed in the Liberian Civil War. Proceeds from the sale of the albums will go towards the reconstruction of the university music area.
The von Bomus legacy goes far beyond the Liberian shores.
When we went to Sierra Leone and we took the sound of music there.
We traveled to United States, Uganda, Central Africa, Zaire.
Since our inception in 2009, the chorus has held annual benefit concerts in different cities across the United States. Our initial fulfillment to assist was a contribution of $10,000 presented to the university in 2011. In 2014, we partnered with the university during the Ebola crisis and contributed much needed supplies. Beyond these, we have made available more than $25,000 for our Scholarship and Teaching Excellence Award programs. Currently, we have 6 students on our scholarship this academic 2017-2018 school year. We value education and are direct beneficiaries of the quality education we received at the University of Liberia. We want to help more of you, but we cannot help you if you do not help yourselves by applying. Make it your duty to go to the University Administrative Office and ask about available scholarships from the University of Liberia Alumni Chorus. Please apply. So, we urge you to take advantage of this golden opportunity that is being made available to you through our scholarship program. Thank you, and may God bless you in your pursuits of your dreams. Sincerely, Rena Smith-Jarrett, President, University of Liberia Alumni Chorus.
Well, that's our program for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on another edition of Development Matters.